Hello, my dear friends. There are moments in human life when a message does not arrive to entertain the mind, but to awaken the heart. This is one of those moments. Not everyone will understand what is being said here. Not everyone will be ready to hear it. Not everyone will recognize the deeper movement taking place beneath the surface of the world. But those who are meant to receive this message will feel it, not just as words, but as a quiet stirring in the center of their being. Because there are times when the soul recognizes truth before the mind has the language to explain it. There are times when your heart feels a shift before your eyes can see any evidence of it. There are times when something within you begins to rise, not because the outer world has become peaceful, but because your inner world has finally become unwilling to live in fear any longer. This message is for those who are standing at that threshold now. It is for those who have grown tired of the noise, tired of the confusion, tired of the endless pressure of a world that feeds on division, reaction, and emotional exhaustion. It is for those who can feel that something deeper is being asked of them in this season of change. Not panic, not blind belief, not escape, but conscious choice, a higher response, a more powerful way of standing in the middle of uncertainty. The message is simple, but it is not small. Keep choosing unconditional love, not sentimental love, not weak love, not love that pretends darkness does not exist, but the kind of love that remains rooted even when the world shakes. The kind of love that refuses to become hatred, even when surrounded by fear. The kind of love that keeps the soul clear, the mind steady, and the heart open, even in a time when many are being pulled toward judgment, bitterness, and inner collapse. This is not a passive path. This is one of the strongest paths a human being can walk, because anyone can react. Anyone can mirror chaos. Anyone can become what they have been exposed to. But to remain centered in the midst of pressure, to remain conscious in the midst of confusion, to remain kind without becoming naive, to remain loving without abandoning discernment, that is spiritual strength. And that is what is being asked of you now. Many people imagine that transformation arrives like lightning, all at once, in one sudden event that changes everything overnight. But often, the deeper transformation comes differently. It arrives as a series of choices, quiet choices, repeated choices, invisible choices that no one applauds, no one celebrates, no one even notices. And yet those choices build an entirely different life, an entirely different field of energy, an entirely different future. Every time you refuse to feed fear, you strengthen light within yourself. Every time you choose compassion over cruelty, you strengthen light within yourself. Every time you stop yourself from falling into hatred, mockery, or hopelessness, you strengthen light within yourself. Every time you pause before judging another soul, you strengthen light within yourself. Every time you return to love after disappointment, grief, betrayal, confusion, or anger, you strengthen light within yourself. This is how the heart becomes clear again. This is how the soul becomes steady again. This is how a human being begins to carry peace instead of merely searching for it. There are many people right now who can feel that the old ways are cracking. The old emotional structures, the old thought patterns, the old survival identities, the old addictions to drama, control, and reaction. Even if they cannot name it, they can feel that something is no longer sustainable. Something in the human spirit is refusing to keep living at the same level of heaviness. That feeling is not weakness. That feeling is not delusion. That feeling is not failure. It is often the beginning of awakening. Awakening is not always comfortable. Sometimes it begins when what used to distract you no longer satisfies you. Sometimes it begins when the things you used to tolerate start to feel unbearable. Sometimes it begins when your soul becomes too honest to keep pretending, too awake to keep shrinking. too hungry for truth to keep settling for emotional numbness. And when that awakening begins, one of the greatest lessons arrives quickly. Your energy matters, not in a trendy or shallow sense, not as a slogan, but as a reality. What you dwell in, you become more connected to. What you repeat, you strengthen. What you focus on, you feed. What you emotionally worship, you empower. This is why unconditional love matters so deeply. Because love is not merely an emotion here. It is a direction. It is a feel. It is a frequency of being that keeps you from becoming the very thing you say you are trying to rise above. Many souls lose themselves not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lived too long in reaction. They gave their peace away to every headline, every conflict, every opinion, every offense, every emotional storm that passed through their day. Little by little, they forgot their center. Little by little, they built their inner world around disturbance. And then they wondered why joy felt distant, why clarity felt weak, why faith felt unstable. You cannot build peace by constantly rehearsing chaos. You cannot become light by constantly feeding darkness with your attention, your obsession, and your emotional devotion. This is why the call now is not simply to believe something new. It is to become different, to walk differently, to hold yourself differently, to respond differently, to keep choosing unconditional love. And let this be understood clearly. Unconditional love does not mean agreeing with everything. It does not mean abandoning discernment. It does not mean allowing harm. It does not mean making yourself small so others can remain comfortable. It does not mean becoming silent in the presence of manipulation. It does not mean refusing to see what is unhealthy, distorted, or destructive. Unconditional love means you do not let darkness rewrite your own nature. It means you refuse to become cruel because cruelty exists. It means you refuse to become hateful because hatred is present. It means you refuse to let deception turn you into a weapon against your own peace. It means your soul remains aligned with truth, but your heart remains free from poison. That is real power. There is a great difference between discernment and judgment. Discernment sees clearly. Judgment hardens the heart. Discernment protects wisdom. Judgment feeds superiority. Discernment helps you recognize where something is not aligned. Judgment attaches identity, condemnation, and ego to what you see. This is why so many spiritual paths collapse into confusion. People begin by seeking truth, but end by worshiping their own certainty. They begin by wanting freedom, but become enslaved to anger. They begin by searching for what is real, but lose the capacity to love anyone who does not see what they see. That is not liberation. That is only another form of bondage. If your truth makes you colder, harsher, more arrogant, more hostile, and more disconnected from compassion, then something in your path needs correction. Real truth does not make the heart smaller. It makes it stronger, cleaner, steadier, and more capable of holding light without collapsing into ego. This is why non-judgment matters now more than ever. Not because everything is equal. Not because all choices are harmless. Not because discernment should disappear. But because the human tendency to condemn has become a trap. It drains energy. It clouds perception. It binds the soul to the very density it is trying to move beyond. Many people today are carrying invisible exhaustion because they have spent years reacting, arguing, proving, defending, comparing, and emotionally fighting with a world that was never going to become peaceful through force alone. Their bodies feel tired. Their minds feel restless. Their hearts feel heavy. And beneath all of it is one simple truth. They have been trying to win externally while losing themselves internally. That is why this message arrives now. Return to your center. Return to your heart. Return to what is eternal within you. Return to the one field that strengthens rather than depletes you, unconditional love. This does not mean withdrawing from life. It means walking through life with a different inner posture. You can still be aware without becoming consumed. You can still be discerning without becoming hard. You can still see the confusion in the world without allowing confusion to take residence in your own spirit. You can still remain informed without making fear your identity. You can still stand strong without becoming spiritually violent. And this matters because many people are entering a season in which emotional intensity will try to define them. Pressure will try to rush them. Uncertainty will try to destabilize them. Noise will try to scatter them. Conflict will try to recruit them. But you do not have to belong to every storm you witness. Read that again within your heart. You do not have to belong to every storm you witness. You do not have to emotionally enroll in every wave of fear. You do not have to carry the vibration of every room you enter. You do not have to inherit the chaos of every person you encounter. You do not have to become internally broken just because the outer world is passing through another season of upheaval. You are allowed to remain centered. You are allowed to remain clear. You are allowed to remain protected in your heart. You are allowed to keep your soul in alignment with peace. This is not denial. This is mastery. There is protection in love that many people do not yet understand. Not the fragile love that depends on outer approval. Not the conditional love that disappears when challenged. But the deeper state of soul alignment that happens when you consistently choose love over fear, presence over panic, trust over inner fragmentation. When you live this way, you stop leaking so much of your energy into everything around you. You stop becoming spiritually available to every distraction. You stop opening internal doors to every passing darkness. Your field becomes clearer. Your choices become stronger. Your intuition becomes easier to hear. Your peace becomes more difficult to steal. This is why the path of love is not weakness. It is containment. It is coherence. It is energetic integrity. And many of you listening already know this from experience. You have noticed that some people leave you drained, while other moments leave you quietly strengthened. You have noticed that certain thoughts lower your state immediately, while other thoughts restore you. You have noticed that resentment poisons your body faster than anyone else's words ever could. You have noticed that compassion, gratitude, prayer, sincerity, service, beauty, and presence reconnect you to something much greater than the mind. These are not small observations. They are signs. They are reminders. They are evidence that your soul already knows what nourishes life and what diminishes it. So trust what brings you back to clarity. Trust what softens the inner noise without dulling your intelligence. Trust what expands peace in your body without disconnecting you from truth. Trust what strengthens your heart without making you dependent on outer drama. That is where your path becomes visible again. There will always be voices that invite you into fear. There will always be systems, personalities, and emotional currents that demand your reaction. There will always be confusion around you. There will always be people who want certainty faster than wisdom can grow. There will always be those who mock the path of inner peace because they have forgotten what peace feels like. Bless them, but do not follow them. Do not abandon your soul in order to fit the mood of a frightened world. Do not give up your center just because chaos is louder. Do not let urgency replace depth. Do not let intensity replace wisdom. Do not let collective emotion replace your own sacred discernment. Not everyone will receive this message because not everyone is ready to release their addiction to fear. Not everyone is ready to stop worshiping conflict. Not everyone is ready to admit that the real battle is not merely external. It is within the human heart. It is within the places where resentment is still fed, where ego is still defended, where pain is still repeated as identity, where love is still postponed until the world becomes easier. But love cannot wait for perfect conditions. Light cannot wait for universal agreement. Peace cannot wait until every voice approves of it. The higher path begins the moment you decide that your inner state matters more than the chaos trying to claim it. Some are waiting for a sign that everything will become easier. But the deeper sign is this: you are being invited to become stronger. Strong enough to remain open without becoming gullible. Strong enough to remain compassionate without becoming passive. Strong enough to remain truthful without becoming self-righteous. Strong enough to remain loving while the old patterns around you continue to collapse. This is how new life begins. Not merely through outer events, but through inner embodiment. Not merely by hearing a message, but by living it. Not merely by admiring light, but by becoming a keeper of it. Ask yourself honestly, what have you been feeding lately? Fear or peace? Reaction or awareness? Condemnation or compassion? Noise or truth? Hurry or presence? Bitterness or sincerity? Performance or prayer? Inner violence or inner alignment? Your future is not shaped only by what happens to you. It is also shaped by what you repeatedly become in response to what happens to you. That is why this matters. Because a heart that keeps choosing love is not the same heart it used to be. A mind that keeps returning to truth is not the same mind it used to be. A soul that keeps releasing judgment is not the same soul it used to be. This path changes you, quietly, deeply, lastingly. And yes, there may still be hard moments. There may still be grief. There may still be misunderstanding, loneliness, pressure, and seasons when the road feels long. But even then, the choice remains the same. What will you become in the middle of it? Will you become harder or clearer? Will you become colder or wiser? Will you become reactive or anchored? Will you become bitter or luminous? This is the real threshold before you. The world has taught many people to believe that power looks like control, domination, exposure, noise, speed, and force. But some of the greatest power in existence is invisible to the untrained eye. The power to remain calm when others panic. The power to remain kind when others become cruel. The power to remain honest when deception is rewarded. The power to bless what you cannot control. The power to hold your heart open without allowing your soul to become weak. That is sacred strength. And sacred strength is what will carry many of you through the years ahead. Not perfection, not performance, not spiritual image, not superiority, but sincerity, consistency, humility, inner steadiness, and unconditional love. Let your love become mature. Let it become courageous. Let it become intelligent. Let it become disciplined. Let it become visible through your choices, your tone, your restraint, your words, your patience, your prayers, your compassion, your self-respect, your ability to walk away from what depletes you, and your refusal to hate in return. You do not need to convince everyone. You do not need to save everyone. You do not need to explain your soul to every passing voice. You do not need to force awakening. You do not need to chase validation. You do not need to carry every burden. You do not need to solve the entire world before sunset. But you do need to remain true to the light you have already been given. Protect that light. Strengthen that light. Live from that light. Share that light. And when you fail, return to it again. When you feel tired, return to it again. When you feel disappointed, return to it again. When you feel misunderstood, return to it again. When you feel tempted to shut down, harden, or emotionally disappear, return to it again. This is the path. Not one perfect moment. Not one emotional high. Not one inspiring message. But the steady return. The faithful return. the brave return. Again and again and again. Keep choosing unconditional love. Choose it in the way you speak to yourself. Choose it in the way you speak to others. Choose it in the way you carry your body through difficult days. Choose it in the way you release what no longer belongs in your spirit. Choose it in the way you look at another person's pain without needing to judge it. Choose it in the way you refuse to let despair become your personality. Choose it in the way you continue to believe that life within a human being still matters. Because it does matter, more than many realize. There are hearts all over this world that are starving not merely for information, but for coherence. Not merely for opinions, but for peace. Not merely for predictions, but for presence. Not merely for intensity, but for truth wrapped in love. Become one of those presences. Become one of those souls. Become one of those people whose energy reminds others that clarity still exists, that kindness still exists, that depth still exists, that faith still exists, that peace is still possible, and that love was never meant to be treated as weakness. There is a difference between being emotionally impressive and being spiritually trustworthy. Choose to become trustworthy. Trustworthy in your tone. Trustworthy in your energy. Trustworthy in your compassion. Trustworthy in your integrity. Trustworthy in what you amplify. Trustworthy in what you refuse to become. Because this world does not only need louder voices, it needs cleaner hearts. It needs human beings who can carry light without turning it into ego. It needs souls who can perceive darkness without becoming fascinated by it. It needs men and women who know that true awakening is not escape from humanity, but the redemption of how humanity is carried within. So hear this message clearly. The path remains open. Love remains powerful. Your heart still matters. Your choices still matter. Your peace still matters. Your integrity still matters. Your refusal to feed fear still matters. Your willingness to remain compassionate still matters. Your decision to stand in the light, even quietly, even imperfectly, even without applause, still matters. Maybe more than you know. So do not underestimate what is happening inside you. Do not dismiss the quiet work of the soul. Do not imagine that only dramatic change is real change. Some of the most sacred shifts begin in silence. In restraint, in tears no one sees, in forgiveness no one applauds, in patience no one rewards, in prayers no one hears, in private moments when a soul decides, once again, that it would rather remain aligned with love than become another expression of fear. That decision echoes farther than you know, and perhaps that is why you found this message now, not by accident. Not by pressure, but by resonance. Something in you still recognizes what is real. Something in you still longs for peace more than performance. Something in you still knows that the highest path is not to become more dramatic, but more pure, more honest, more loving, more awake, more inwardly free. So in the days ahead, when the world feels loud, come back to the center. When fear tries to recruit you, come back to the center. When outrage tries to seduce you, come back to the center. When judgment tries to harden you, come back to the center. When despair whispers that goodness is naive, come back to the center. And there, in that sacred place within you, choose again. Choose love again. Choose peace again. Choose truth again. Choose presence again. Choose compassion again. Choose the higher path again. Choose the clear heart again. Choose the luminous soul again. Keep choosing unconditional love, because not everyone will receive this message. But you did, and now the choice is in your hands.